Hi, Assalamualaikum. My name is Aiman Daniel bin Muhammad Hud Akhtar, and today I will present to you about photography trend of Edward Baldus. So these are my table of content. Let me start with the introduction of the presentation. French photographer Edward Baldus was the most prominent and prosperous photographer in France by the middle of the 1850s. Baldus specialized in images of the landscape, architecture, and railways. He started out as a painter before switching to photography in 1849, just as paper negatives were starting to gain popularity. He identified himself as a painter-photographer in city directories for a major fraction of his life, referring more to his education than to his actual work. Edward Baldus was born on 5th June 1813 in Grumbach, Prussia. Considered turning to photography in 1849, he was enrolled as a painter and had previously held jobs as a lithographer and a draftsman. 25-year-old Edward Baldus arrived in Paris in 1838 to pursue a career in the arts just before Louis Daguerre unveiled his incredibly accurate photography images to the public. From 1851 to 1861, saw Baldus abandon the easel and pick up the camera, rise to the top of his new profession, win international critical acclaim, secure commissions from government ministries and captains of industry, and produce a body of work that is now regarded as early masterpieces of the art. As a painter, he met with little success and received no critical mention. In 1851, he helped establish the Société Héliographique. Then again, in 1857, the Société Française de Photographie. Also in 1851, the Historic Monuments Commissions of France hired him to form the Missions Heliographiques, which is to photograph historical buildings, bridges, and monuments, many of which were being demolished to make room for Paris' luxurious boulevards. So these are some of the achievements from Edward Baldus. One of his greatest assignments was to document the Louvre Museum's building. The builder of the Louvre was commissioned by the emperor to create personalized books of Baldus' artwork, which were given to members of the royal family, dignitaries from other countries, and a few French municipal libraries. Baldus received more support from the government as a result of his artistic excellence in the Missions Heliographics project. The ornately bound album is still one of the treasures kept in Windsor Castle's Royal Library. The president of Chemin de Fer du Nord, Baron James de Rothschild, hired Baldus in 1855 to take a number of pictures for an album that will be sent to Queen Victoria and Prince Albert as a memento of their trip to France. So these are his legacy. Along with other future photographers like Legret, Lesec, and Negret, Baldus relocated to Paris in 1838 to study painting. Frequently printed his own large-scale negatives after editing his paper negatives with pencil and ink to add clouds or clarify features. Baldus made his extensive portfolio available as photographers, which were images made from photographic negatives transferred to etching plates. Baldus again broke new ground in terms of aesthetics in the second of his two railway albums, which was commissioned in 1861 by the Chemins de Fer de Paris à Lyon et à la Méditerranée. In this album, Baldus drew on a decade's worth of work to speak powerfully and elegantly about the interrelationship between history and progress. Baldus presented Second Empire engineers as the natural hires to a great tradition of building that stretched back to Roman and medieval times by blending his classic views of historic architecture, the ramparts of Avignon, the Maison Carrée, Saint Trophime, and the Pont du Gard with boldly geometric images of the railroad tracks, stations, tunnels, and viaducts. His images of the new Louvre's building glorified the Second Empire's splendor and established archives as a work of art. Additionally, his demonstration of a landscape that had been altered by contemporary engineering exuded confidence in the advancement of technology. Baldus created the standard for photographic depiction in genres that had hardly existed before him under 10 years. So these are some of the important artwork by Edward Baldus. The first one is Roman Arch at Orange, 1851. Baldus created two views of the Roman triumphal arch in the provincial town of Orange for the mission's heliographics. A man sits quietly on a stone beneath the central arch in the first image, and another man stands nearby. The second image depicts the monument almost frontally, with sunlight glinting on the far edges of the arch openings. Nimes, 12 March 1853. Baldus filled the frame with the ancient Roman tomb at the Tourmente in Nimes, adding no background information beyond the pebble-strewn foreground. The variety of texture found on the deteriorating masonry and the conflict between the builder's desire for an imperishable memorial, the modern restorer's efforts to preserve the past, and the vegetation sprouting inexorably from its high walls, the photograph's aesthetic and human interest lie in these elements. Entrance to the port of Bologna, 1855. The railway line's Paris terminal, Boulogne-sur-Mer, served as the main hub for trade and transport between Second Empire France and Victorian England. It was also where Queen Victoria arrived for her official visit in 1855, and this extraordinarily beautiful, understated print is from an album ordered by the line's owner to be sent to the imperial court on that occasion. The floods of 1856, Avignon, 1856. Baldus portrayed the devastating floods of 1856 in Avignon with a rare poetry. He turned his camera while seated on the cathedral terrace to create this expansive six-part panorama that includes the entire Rhone Valley, the village of Villeneuve-les-Avignon, the island of Barthelès that has been submerged, and the river as it slowly empties into its banks can all be seen in this area. Imperial Library of the Louvre, 1856 to 1857. The new Louvre of Napoleon III attempted to connect the Second Empire to the illustrious tradition of Catherine de' Medici and Louis XIV in a literal sense, realizing the long-held desire of numerous French kings and queens. Beginning in 1854, Baldus, the top architectural photographer of the day, was hired to create a visual record of the development. Groupe dans les parcs du Château de la Faloise, 1856. This picture, along with 8 others from the same session, shows Baldus' first step into the portrayal of affluent leisure, a theme that would later become a pillar of Impressionist painting. Baldus placed the figures quite deliberately and characteristically, even in a picture that purports to show an easygoing garden setting. He organized the bench and chairs with almost architectonic symmetry. Toulon 1861. The Paris-Lyon-Méditerranée (PLM) Railroad commissioned Baldus in July 1861 to prepare an album of images of the train infrastructure and important locations that the route between Lyon, Marseille, and Toulon served. Baldus mixed bold geometric views of the contemporary landscape railroad tracks, stations, bridges, viaducts, and tunnels into his landscape and architectural photographs, effectively addressing the impact of technology. So these are more photography by Edward Baldus. The first one is Railway Station, Marseille, CA 1855. Second one is La Fasquette Méridionale de la Grande Galerie, Paris, 1855 to 1857. Vue des Ports de Boulogne, 1855. Pavillon Richelieu and Pavillon Turgot, Louvre, Paris, 1855 to 1857. Ramparts destroyed by the flood, Avignon, France, 1856. Lyon Viaduc du Rhône, 1861C, 1861C. Construction of a viaduct on rail line of Chemin de Fer, Paris-Marseille, 1853 to 1854. Lyon Viaduc du Rhône, 1855 to 1856, 1861C. And lastly, Facade Bibliothèque Impériale du Louvre, CA 1854. So as the conclusion for my presentation, the photographs of Edward Baldus are inextricably linked to the principal ideas of his age. Beginning with the mission heliographic, his views of historic monuments presented the vestige of the past with unromanticized clarity for the architect, archaeologist, historian, and armchair traveler. His photographs of the construction of the new Louvre celebrated the glory of the Second Empire and created an art of the archive. His presentation of a landscape transformed by modern engineering. So that's all for my presentation. Thank you for lending me your times, and I hope you enjoy the presentation that I give to you. So that's all. Thank you.